Welcome to Raising the Bar, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the country's most successful leaders and how they elevate their business and their teams. Please welcome our host, Alison DePauli.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Raising the Bar with Alison DePauli. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to Will Walker of Walker Forge in Wisconsin. It is a third generation family owned business in a very tough global market. And we are going to talk mainly about human capital management, which sounds dreadfully dull, but you all know is so not. We'll link Will's bio and all kinds of information in the show notes. But in the meantime, welcome, Will.
Alison, thank you. It's great to be with you.
I'm so glad you're here. And we've had such a great discussion already about how to find people to work for you, which is a big challenge in Texas, particularly with the Great Migration and all the things that we have going on. And you seem to have cracked that nut pretty well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you're nice to say that we've cracked the nut. I would never say that we have solved the human capital issue, but we've put a lot of work into it over a long period of time. And I think that we're probably doing some things that I can share with you today and your audience. Happy to do so. On the subject of human capital, I want to just start out by talking about when I initially joined the business close to 30 years ago. I was fortunate enough to read a book by Jim Collins. And the name of the book is Good to Great. And it was a bestseller and whatnot. But anybody who is in business who hasn't read that book, it's one of my all-time favorites. And part of the reason why it is because Jim talks about, in one section, he talks about how important it is to get the right people on the bus and to get them sitting in the right seats. And once you've got the right people on the bus and those people in the right seats, you've probably solved about 90% of business success right there. And that's been a guiding principle for me all throughout. Of course, when I entered the business 30 years ago, the demographics and the availability of talent was quite a bit different than it is today. So we have, over a period of time, developed some strategies to help us attract and retain talent at our company. And, the way I just mentioned it, attract and retain, I'd actually like to flip that a little bit because I think that while a lot of people employers talk about the difficulty they have in hiring people and in finding talent, I think you have to begin and have the first priority be on retaining the talent that you have. And because if you can't retain the talent that you have, the goal of hiring more is going to be a bit of a self-defeating kind of focus. So in terms of retaining people, how do you do that? A long time ago, I was tipped off to the idea of doing an employee opinion survey, an anonymous employee opinion survey. And we've been doing that at our company for a long time. We do it probably every 2 or 3 years. And the reason why we do it is because it gives us a concrete way to measure employee engagement and employee satisfaction. And this survey asks about a whole range of different topics, including working conditions, compensation, etc. But it gives us a great window into what our employees are thinking, what we can do to make our place of business an employer of choice. And it's paid great dividends for us for a long period of time.
What has surprised you the most that has come out of that survey?
I think that what surprised us the most is when we started doing it, we thought that we were doing it to provide that the main benefit of it was to provide an outlet of communication where our employees could feel like they could say what was on their mind. But the most surprising thing about it has been the extent to which the input and the feedback that we've received on the survey has been valuable, and the extent to which we've been able to apply that feedback to make our company better and to really improve our organization. So it's something that not all employers do. The ones that do it, I think, tend to be big believers in it. And it's not a long term, I bring this up. It's not something that's going to transform your business tomorrow, but business success is a mixture of both short and long-term initiatives. And I would say anybody who's not currently doing an employee opinion survey, you should seriously consider it as part of your long-term human capital strategy. Another thing which we do, which I think is very important in the area of retention and retaining your employees, is, do you measure your turnover? Do you know what your attrition rate is? I receive a monthly report which talks about and provides data on how many people have left our organization and for what reason. Did they retire? Are they voluntary terminations? Are they involuntary? And it's after looking at that report that you begin to get a sense of the size of the gap that you need to fill each year. Do I need to fill a 20% turnover rate? How many people naturally am I going to have to replace, much less, to say nothing of the number of people I need to hire to grow. So being able to measure that and know what that is very important. The other thing that I'd say on the area of retention is that, there are a number of things that employers can do. And I'm not even going to begin to try and list them all the things that you can do to make your employees want to stay. I think that's something each employer has to figure out. But what I would say is that there are 2 or 3, I'll say, guideposts or just things that are universally true that people need to keep in mind. My experience tells me that your employees, they need to feel like they're valued. And what are you doing as a CEO or as a leader of your company to make sure that your employees feel valued? I can tell you one thing that I do, and I started doing this a number of years ago and I enjoy doing it, is every time an employee of mine, we have about 350 employees, every time an employee of mine reaches a milestone anniversary, a work anniversary, and I define that to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I write them a personal handwritten note congratulating them and telling them how much we appreciate what they do for our company and how important their contributions are to our overall success. And
I know a number of employers that do that, and it is hands down one of the most valuable employee relation activities they do.
Absolutely. So that's good to hear that you're familiar. I mean, I didn't assume it was totally unique to me, but yeah, I would venture to guess that it would be single digits at most.
Yes.
The number of CEOs that do that.
It is, but they all think it's very valuable.
Absolutely. Another thing that we do besides that, and I should also mention the employee notes are something that occurs by definition infrequently, but there are other things that we do that make people love working at Walker Forge. What we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a sense of teamwork, a sense of shared purpose. Aside from letting them know that they're valued, I think that you also need to make sure that employees feel empowered. People want to have freedom to do what they do and do it in a way that they don't feel micromanaged.
Yeah.
So those two things, if you can make people feel valued, make them feel empowered, and ideally, maybe the last thing would be to give them a greater sense of shared, I'll call it purpose, giving them information about what the overall direction of the business is, what we're trying to do as a team, because everybody wants to be on a team. I think it's human nature.
Yep.
It's just a question of whether you're making your employees feel like they are part of a team headed towards a shared purpose. We as a private family-held company are able to do things that maybe some larger entities are not. I mean, we have a cash profit sharing program, and we get together every year and we talk about how we did, and we hand out checks to our employees. And that's certainly, you want to talk about something that brings people together towards a shared goal. Profit sharing will do that.
How do you manage? I mean, you are a manufacturing environment, and how do you manage the empowering people and needing to follow process? Because I think a lot of people struggle there.
That's a great question. I'll give you just an example of that. Right. So we have a manufacturing company with a lot of different departments and a lot of different individual jobs that people do, whether they're working in the shear department or whether they're working in the setup department or the tool room or the forging department or the machining department or the heat treating department. But what we do is we empower our people on the floor with information. So each one has a computer in front of them. And while there's an overall schedule that they can see, they get to do their own scheduling. In other words, they get to do micro scheduling where they can say, if I run these 3 jobs consecutively, even though they're not listed, they don't all have the same due date. I can pick and choose. I can minimize setups. I can minimize tooling changes. I can minimize a downtime if I run these 3 like jobs in succession consecutively. And so they are actually scheduling themselves in how they run those jobs. And their only constraint is they need to be done with the jobs that they're responsible for in time for their next internal customer, who will then receive the product of their work. So that's one example of how we do things. I think the other thing that we do is we encourage. This is actually one of the great things that I love to talk about. We have something called an ideas program, and we've had it for many years. And this ideas program is something where each employee is encouraged to submit ideas on how we can reduce costs. And a cost savings idea, once it's submitted, gets reviewed by a committee, and if approved, then it gets implemented. And it really encourages employees to give us not only their physical labor but also their minds as well. And it's a neat program that's saved us literally millions of dollars over time. And you would think, well, after a certain period of time, I assume it's really tough to come up with new ideas. No, I mean, for instance, we've been running this program for 20 years at least. And last year, or maybe it was the year before, we came up with one of the most fundamental and obvious, I can say that in hindsight, it was obvious, but something that was just massively beneficial. And it was right there for the taking, but we finally discovered it. And it's just, I never cease to be amazed at the way that program can empower people to come up with ideas and solutions that will make our company better. And then at the end of the year, we have a ideas banquet where we bring everybody together with their spouses, and then we throw a big party and we provide, certificates and awards and whatnot, good recognition to celebrate this great program, which everybody enjoys.
I imagine. Do you have other recognition or other celebrations throughout the course of the year?
Oh, absolutely. We have something called a 20-year club. And the 20-year club, as you might have already guessed, is to celebrate those employees that have been with us 20 years or more. And the 20-year club is something that it's kind of like a revered organization or a revered club in our company, because we place such high regard on longevity. In fact, our philosophy at Walker Forge is we want to find great people, we want to hire them, and we want to keep them for their entire career. And I can tell you that probably 35 to 40% of our total employees are members of the 20-year club.
That is an astounding percentage, and I think would only happen in a family business.
Yeah. Well, it's increasingly uncommon, the days where you can hire somebody out of college or out of tech school or even out of high school and keep them their whole career. That is, it's a lot less common today than it was when I started, but it's really our goal, and it's really what we've been able to achieve to a large degree. I'll share an interesting tidbit with you. We had a 401k consultant, somebody who wanted to work with us to make our 401k better. And we ultimately didn't hire him, but in the process, he compared our plan to a bunch of other plans. And what we came to learn is that we have about 50% more assets in our 401k plan than you would normally expect for a company our size. And I asked him, I said, what is the explanation for that? That's just an astounding difference. And he said, well, it has to do with the longevity and the staying power of your employees. If your employees were staying 4 years or 5 years and then leaving, you'd have a lot less assets in your plan. But your average employee has been with you a long time, and their 401k balances reflect that.
I think that's a fascinating statistic. And I think, I really do think that this is not possible in a publicly traded company, very rarely, or even in a PE firm. I think it is family businesses that do that. I remember my father has been a serial entrepreneur, and there were people that went with him from business to business that I knew my whole life. And I think that's a different dynamic and a very interesting dynamic. And I'm sorry that it isn't more common.
Well, and if you stop and think about it, we started out talking about retention and attraction of employees. I mean, it's so critical to your capital, your human capital strategy. I mean, if I can keep somebody for their entire career, then that's less turnover. My investment in that person is it gets a chance to grow over time, and it's good for the employee and it's good for the employer. Yes. So anyway, that's a lot. Those are some of the high points of how we try and retain people. Each employer's got to find their way in that regard, but I hope that gives you a sense. Now, on the attraction element, it actually ties right in to what I just talked about. And what I would say is, we do at our company what I'm sure a lot of employers do. We've made adjustments to our compensation strategy. You have to have competitive wages and benefits. And a number of employers, I'm sure, have found out over the last 2 or 3 years that they needed to make adjustments
Yes.
and whatnot. Really, what you're trying to do in this demographic situation that we've got, where there just aren't enough workers, and I think that's really true. Any employer that thinks that, once the unemployment benefit program bonus benefits runs out, that the world is going to be great and it'll be easy, I think they're a little bit mistaken.
I agree.
We are in a demographic situation where the human capital, the difficulty finding people, it's hard, and it's not going to be getting easier probably in my lifetime. Hopefully I'm wrong about that, but I see nothing on the horizon that will change that. So the issue really, I think, tends to be what can you as an employer do to entice or to draw people from other employers? I mean, most everybody out there is who you want to bring to your company is already working. They're doing something, and what can you bring to the party that will make them want to come your way? And I think some of the things that we've already talked about will help an employer be in that position where they are an employer of choice. If they become an employer of choice, it makes your job so much easier. But yes, once you've done all that, what are you going to do to draw people to your company? And wage and competitive wages, benefits, that's obvious. That's table stakes and whatnot. Other things that we've done are flexibility, flexible work schedules. I think that's critically important.
How do you manage that with your process? I have a number of manufacturing clients, and that is one of the things that they really struggle with, particularly when they run a third shift, is that overnight shift, while already hard to staff, is even harder now. And sometimes they just can't run it because they don't have enough staff. How do you manage that with flexible schedules?
Sure. Well, we've done, there's a way to accommodate people even in a manufacturing environment, a fast-paced manufacturing environment. I'll just give you an example. We have a certain position that requires a lot of skill and experience. It's called a forge press operator, and it's something you don't pick up in a day. And we had an individual who left our company to take employment elsewhere for reasons that had nothing to do with us. It had to do with a personal situation. And anyway, he enjoyed working with us and for us. And he contacted us and said, is there any way I could give you some hours? And we, in addition to keeping my new job, and we came up with a solution where he could come by for, I think it was maybe 8 or 10 hours a week after he was done at his other job, to come by and run a press for us. And it would be a set time during the week where we could plan on him. And so that is just one example of what you can do. If you really stop and think about it, it's once you get over the hurdle of being willing to be flexible and realizing the need to be flexible, it's pretty easy to come up with ways to accommodate people's schedules. I just gave you one example, but other employers, could look at having some people on an 8-hour shift. Other employers will look at, would we be better off offering people the opportunity to do a 10-hour shift or even a 12-hour shift and working fewer days, but working longer hours each day so that people can have longer weekends or whatever. There are a myriad of different ways that you can be flexible. I think obviously whatever you come up with, it has to be something that is where there are expectations. You will be here at a certain time on a certain day.
Yeah.
And once you do that, though, lots of possibilities open up. But in addition to flexibility, I think the other thing that you want to think about is how can I how can I, as an employer, turn my workforce into a army of advocates, an army of recruiters?
Which goes
Think
back
about
to
think about the force multiplier of that. It's one thing to place an ad on social media or on a billboard or on Indeed or whatever way you try and attract people. But what if you could actually turn your employees into advocates and into recruiters? That's huge.
It is huge.
Yeah. So that's just a thought, a seed that I would plant in your audience.
I think you have the thing that I have taken from this entire conversation is human capital management. And I think so many people, so I think the term is a little maybe harsh, but I think when you treat people like people and you find a way for them to be happy and give them satisfied and give them a purpose, that those numbers are important as your financial numbers. Knowing your attrition rate, knowing how long people are staying, knowing why they're staying, that is equal on the financial management side, and it helps the financial management side as well.
Oh, that's a great summary. I wish I guess this is being recorded, so I'll be able to listen to you say that again. But no, you summarized that very, very well. Better than I could have done.
Well, your ideas were great. And I think sometimes people kind of get stuck in the day-to-day and they don't think about it. I mean, I think that happens to all of us, right? Like we're all CEOs of some variety. I mean, I have a smaller organization, but I'm the CEO of this organization. And sometimes managing the human capital escapes me. We just have to get the work done and move on. But the more time you spend, the easier it becomes in other ways.
Well, and I would even go so far as to say, Allison, that how you manage your human capital, no matter what firm you are, whether you're a manufacturer or a service company, it is, in my mind, the key differentiator, the key difference between success and failure in this economy. It really is. It's that important. It's the determinant of success and failure.
It is hugely important. And I think in your instance, before we wrap up, you are a family business. You are the third generation, and I believe the fourth generation is coming soon. And I know you're looking forward to that. What is the best advice that you got from your father and your grandfather, and how are you going to pass that on to the fourth generation in an environment that is so rapidly changing?
Well, the answer to that question is engraved on a plaque in our conference room and at our manufacturing facility. And on the plaque, it reads, "Our employees are our most important asset." And that is something that is central to our existence at our company. And I believe that the fourth generation, I believe he knows that already, but he's going to see that in many different ways when he joins and heads down the journey of becoming the next generation leader of our company.
I know you are looking forward to that. I think it's always a pleasure to work with your children.
Absolutely.
In our case, sometimes it was a loud pleasure as I was much younger, but I think it is a pleasure to work with I worked for my father for a number of years as a grown person, not just as a child. And it was a pleasure. It was sometimes loud, but it was a pleasure. So I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
Well, if my son enjoys working with me half as much as I've enjoyed working with my father, he will be a happy man.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And if you like the show, subscribe, give us a review. We'd love to extend this a little further, and we will give you resources for the book and all the commentary today in the show notes. Thank you again, Will.
Thank you, Allison. Have a great day.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Raising the Bar is powered by Altiqe Consulting, the country's leading independent expert in healthcare cost containment. Astute employers know there's a better way to offer health insurance, and we help them achieve it.